Hey, Andrew, Frank. Hello, everybody.
Hello, hello.
Hi, Jenna. Hello, everybody. I named this coffee with a recruiter, but I'm actually drinking tea and not coffee. Fun fact. I'm going to launch a little quick poll here. You guys can do this in your own time if you are so inclined. There's some notes in the meeting chat that I just posted up. I have an online question board that I created to help me manage questions. You can put questions up and you can upvote other questions as well. So take a look at that in the chat. We have a surprising amount of people that have signed up for this. Been doing this now for 3 weeks, and the first two, I only had like 6 folks join us. And since then, I have like a roster of like 40 plus folks, and I don't think they'll all show today, but it's a good following. So I think maybe we're doing something right here. So while we're waiting for folks to jump in here, take a peek at the meeting chat. I posted a few links there. Um, and then I'm going to have this question board up in front of me. Just want to make sure that we're efficient with your time, everyone's time.
What is the event number again?
It's in the, did I post it in the,
No, it's not in the chat. I think it's in the
oh, I
invite
didn't.
though. Yeah.
I'll pop it in here in a second,
Okay,
everybody.
cool. Thanks.
Thank you for nudging me on that. Yeah,
Yep.
the event number is that number there.
Yep. Cool. Thanks.
I try to cross all my T's and dot all my I's, but evidently there's something I missed.
No, you're very well organized.
Try to be. Hi, Andrew. Um, I see a question there, Andrew. If you could, actually, I'll pop that in there for you. But if you could put your questions into that job or that job board, sorry guys, in the question board, um, that'll help me and others sort of see the same questions, and everyone can upvote them. I think this got truncated. There's a limit to I guess, the length. Okay. A super quick intro. I've been recruiting for the past 10 years. I'm part of the NSA um, community, the Never Search Alone community. Just a show of hands, is there anyone here that's not involved with the NSA community? There shouldn't be because I haven't really promoted it outside. Okay, cool. So other than some of the logistics I've sort of set up here, I really don't have anything planned for today other than trying to address questions that may be relating to folks' job search as it relates to recruiting process, hiring process, recruiter psychology, hiring manager psychology. And sort of the premise is that my ability to help give you some insight as a job seeker will help really just help you sort of navigate the job search process and sort of the interview process more effectively, and ultimately, find the right opportunity for you with as little effort as possible. So, okay, so I'm just looking at some of the questions here. The one that has the most votes right now is, let's see. When I meet with a recruiter to talk about the market, is there any other prep I should do or consider doing aside from the Manukin? So as far as everyone, so the Manukin, as most folks will become familiar with, is part of the process that's prescribed by by Phil Terry in his book Never Search Alone. And the Manukin is really sort of an inventory of what you like, what you don't like, what you love and hate, so your strengths and weaknesses. And the idea is ultimately to converge on a candidate market fit statement, which will guide how you present yourself to the market through your resume, through your LinkedIn profile, through your interview responses, and so forth. And so there's a step in the process where the Manukin is, it's not a document that's sort of set in stone. It's something that you iterate and that'll evolve as a function of you talking to folks, as a function of you interviewing, doing research, and so forth. But I think the question here has to do with the step where you present your Manukin 2-page document to a recruiter for some validation about where where they see your skills sort of aligning with the market or the level or the role. And so and this question is by John. So as far as preparing for that, obviously you should go through the process that is defined. And again, take some of the process with a grain of salt. Some of that needs to be adapted based on sort of your own style and whatnot. But I guess what I could speak to here is, as a recruiter, what sort of the psychology is behind an interaction where a candidate or where a job seeker would come to a recruiter and start asking some of these questions. A lot of recruiters won't be familiar with this Manukin, and so what I would I'd recommend several things. One is to sort of better understand the recruiter a bit, and you might have to do a little bit of homework on the recruiter, who they are, where they're coming from, just to understand whether they're an internal recruiter or an external recruiter. Chances are, if they're spending time with you, they're probably an external recruiter, and their incentives of external recruiters are a little bit different. And so one thing I would temper is when you approach the recruiter, giving them the vibe that you're going to ask them for a job. For a lot of recruiters, that could be kind of a turnoff because they get that all the time. And so I would try to get to understand who the recruiter is, what's important to them. And you can do this by doing research on LinkedIn, seeing what they're, how they're engaging with content, what kind of content they're creating. But I would try to get to know them a little bit better. I would explain the process to them, right? They won't know what a Manukin document is, chances are, but explain to them what you're going for, right? Tell them explicitly that you're not looking for a job, or you're not asking them for a job anyway. But you're asking for feedback, right? And give them an opportunity to understand the process. Share with them what you're doing as far as your strengths, your weaknesses, your love and hates, and then share with them your candidate market fit statement. And again, it doesn't have to be set in stone, but share with them your resume, and then also give them a chance to you're going to ask what we call that golden question, right? Is where do you see my experience sort of aligning with the job that I can get today, versus one that's a stretch, versus one that is, a reach. And so you could ask them that question, and then just see how they respond. But make sure that they're clear in terms of what you're trying to accomplish. That's what I would recommend. And also, I would recommend when you close the conversation or when you finish the conversation, follow up with a thank you note. A lot of people don't do that, and I know it sounds cliche, but it does mean a lot to someone that's giving time. John, was there any other follow-up questions or anything I could expand on there? I assume John is in here.
No, I think you got it.
Okay.
I think you got it. I think you that was perfect. It's exactly. I mean,
Okay.
I kind of got in right as you were starting to answer the question, and I think
Okay,
you kind
cool.
of covered exactly what I was looking for. I just wanted to make sure. It seemed to me that it was a little rough to just put a Manukin in front of somebody and explain a little bit about what you're doing, and then without having any other kind of context for who you are and where you've come from. And so that aligns with. I was also planning on putting my LinkedIn account or putting my LinkedIn profile, as a link, when I communicate with them originally and talk to them, see if there's an appropriate fit for what I'm looking for. So
Yeah. I think it's just distilling the information that's relevant to those questions. What could I get today? What would be a reach? And what would be sort of probably not attainable in the near future? And then just giving the information that they would need to answer that question. Also pick their brain on trends. A lot of recruiters are out there, they're seeing trends, and it's an opportunity for them to kind of share with you what they know.
yeah, I appreciate that, Eric. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's see. Does the rule of thumb that the best days to apply are midweek, Tuesday through Thursday? Those still apply. I don't know. So the way applications come into a recruiter is it's usually through a pipeline through various channels, right? A recruiter will post a job on LinkedIn, Indeed, what have you, all these different channels. And so whenever you come across an application or a job posting, right, you can apply to it and it'll make its way into the ATS system. And so yeah, I don't know if there's necessarily a best day to apply. What typically a recruiter does is the recruiter's typically working on multiple requisitions, right? And so what I like to do is I'll post a requisition and I'll give it some time because I'm working on other things for folks to start shuffling in. And what'll end up happening is more often than not, when somebody comes in, I'll get like a notification. But if those requisitions are getting inundated or just bombarded with applications, I'll turn those notifications off. And when I get around to it, I'll come back to the stack. And so I won't be looking at inbound like every day. And so depending on the recruiter, they might be staggering when they're looking at inbound for a particular for a particular requisition. And so it's so hard to say. I don't even know if that's a rule of thumb there. David, is there any clarifying questions there or anything that I can expand on? David here. Oh, okay. Is Akila here? No? I'll answer a question anyway, since there's two folks that have upvoted it. It's worth applying when you see a role that is posted on LinkedIn, that is reposted on LinkedIn. Actually, I'm sorry. We answered this question last week. Not sure why it's still on here. Okay. All right. Anyone else have any other questions? Any topics, any situations that with interviewing or navigating the interview process that would benefit from a recruiter's insight?
I had a quick question for you, Eric.
Yeah.
I'm seeing more and more of these job postings that say, hey, if you don't see a job that you like, apply here, like an everything bucket kind of job posting. Which,
Yeah.
they sound like a good idea, but are they a good idea?
So I've seen situations where companies will do that, particularly when the companies are a bit like smaller. So sometimes, and when I'm referring to smaller companies, like I've worked with a lot of startups where a lot of times they don't know what they're hiring for. And if it's the case where if they find the right person, they'll create a role for them.
Mm,
Now, that's probably less prevalent for, more larger, more established companies. Um, the reason why I could think that a larger or more established company would be doing that is just as sort of a catch-all. Um, I don't know why a company would do that just to create more inbound for themselves
mhm,
unnecessarily.
mm,
Um, but I've seen that done for companies that are really focused on finding the right people. And
mm.
that's typically companies that are earlier stage, very dynamic. And if they find the right person, I've seen them create roles for the person. So
Okay, cool. Thank you.
yeah. For those just joining, if you scroll up in the chat, there's a few notes there. There's a Zoom poll that I created. I'm always curious to learn more about kind of where job seekers are at. So take a peek at the chat. I think there's a way I can probably pin that too. No, just scroll to the top. Any other questions?
I have one. I managed to double post it to your online questions. So with apologies, you'll have a bit of cleanup. But as a recruiter, how do you note that someone is expecting to significantly change the scale of company that they're working at, or change their job title significantly, or both? And I'm thinking, as an example, you're working with a lot of startups. If someone's coming from a much bigger firm and is looking to maybe take an executive level position from a middle management position at a big company and go down to your scale, what you're looking for, how do you take a quick look at them, at the resume or their LinkedIn profile, and say, oh yes, they're actually interested in what I'm trying to recruit for, rather than dismiss them because they don't have a good match in terms of scale or scope?
Yeah, so just want to make sure I understand the question, Andrew. So like in a situation where someone has a track record of coming from a mid or large size company and maybe their title is manager, but they're looking to go sort of downstream to a smaller company, but a bigger role. Is that the situation?
Yes, I'm in the exact opposite situation. I've always had a CEO title from a small company. I was just trying to flip the script, but as a CEO of a very small company, I'm not eligible for that sort of role at a larger one. So how do I indicate that I am wanting to change scale, but I understand that the scope of what I would do would also change?
Yeah. Okay, so that's an interesting question. And sort of my immediate reaction to that is um, there is a little bit of a stigma of carrying a CEO title and then going to a larger company and working with a recruiter that is looking at your resume or LinkedIn profile, and you've had executive level, maybe CEO title in the past, and there is a stigma, and I won't say this is prevalent for everybody or applies to all recruiters or hiring managers, but part of the stigma is that this person has been running their own show, and can they fit culturally into our medium or large size organization? And so I think that's a headwind that you have to address in some way, if in fact that exists. You have to tease that out, whether that exists or not, that stigma or that preconception, because that could be a headwind. Similarly, right, you kind of hit the nail on the head the other way around. Like if you're coming from a large company at a VP level and now you're trying to get into a C level position with a smaller company, there's a stigma of, will this person fit into a chaotic, fast moving, startup environment if they're used to structure and so forth. And so getting out ahead of that is something that I guess you have to be pretty thoughtful and strategic about. And how do you do that? Well, for example, on your resume, I think that you have to maybe show kind of the work that you've done in a way that that signals that you can adapt into a different environment. It's tricky. It's tricky. I mean, you might focus more on sort of the functionality of your experience and sort of in some way kind of downplay maybe your title. Yeah, I hope that helps, Andrew. I don't know if there's a sort of a silver bullet there. Does that answer the question at all? I mean, do you feel like I understood the question?
It answers it in a useful way, yes. I guess the specific thing that I was looking for is when, say, you're on LinkedIn and you take a quick look at someone, how do you see that they are signaling that they are expecting a change? An awareness that that their job title might change significantly, might be downgraded, or that they're interested in transitioning cultures and they understand that that's going to be a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, you can convey that in your candidate market fit statement, which generally you should sort of put into your about section on your LinkedIn profile. I mean, part of it is if you look at your trajectory, right? I assume you have more than 10 years of experience. If you look at your so one thing a recruiter does when they're looking at your LinkedIn profile or your resume, the sort of the heuristic is like they just look at titles and they look at title progression, right? It's an easy way to understand kind of the trajectory of where this person has been and kind of where they want to go. Now, if you're suggesting that your trajectory looks like this, but you want to go kind of like that, or not to signal up or down, but you know, if you want to signal that you are going in a different trajectory, and that you're open to taking a different trajectory, I would be just very upfront with that in your candidate market fit statement, and signal that it, you know, explicitly say that it's a departure from your current trajectory, and sort of why, right? What's motivating that? I mean, specifically, in your case, Andrew, are you're moving from, you want to move from a smaller company where you were a CEO to a larger organization? If you don't mind me asking, like, what is that where you, like, what's the motivation behind that? And are you staying in the same industry, or is it just a matter of working with a bigger company to get new experience?
I'm at the very beginning of my job search council process. So
Okay.
this is more an exploratory question. So I understand how to frame
Okay.
the experience rather than I've already got everything lined up for what I want to do.
Okay. Okay.
But I do understand it is a challenge. So I was wondering how that's often seen by recruiters, and you've given good answer to that.
Yeah, hopefully I gave you some insight. Feel free to reach out to me. It's not an easy question, right? I mean, there's a bit of an art to how you sort of spin your narrative for your experience such that there is some continuity, right? Because if it's just a complete abrupt shift, you'll get screened out, right? It's like this person has a track record of working for startups. Now they want to go work for an enterprise level company. You know, as a recruiter, I see that disconnection, and I'd be pretty quick to sort of deprioritize. So, yeah,
Understood, and thank you.
for sure. Let's see what other questions we have here. Okay, I see your two questions there, Andrew. Your thoughts on jobs marked, don't see a role that's matched for your skill. Okay, I think we answered that one. And thank you all for filling out my little poll there. Appreciate that. I think what I'll do in sort of the recap email that goes out to everyone is just sort of recap answers to the poll, just to give everyone some sense of, you know, how folks are answering. Any other questions out there? Christine, Danielle?
Eric, I got a quick question from
Yeah,
Brad.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, I've been running into two types of external recruiters. One type is fast-paced call center environment, quick hits. And then the
Okay.
other one is very engaged, open to conversation and feedback. And I feel like I spend a lot of time on that group that is very, they're trying to define that placement quickly, and they probably got hundreds of people. They don't follow any feedback or anything like that. How do you best distinguish that, or how do you kind of work with that more, hands-on recruiter? It's an odd makeup that I've kind of seen. I think it's been coming out of LinkedIn through some of the jobs I've been applying for. So I don't know if you have any thoughts or feedback
Yeah.
around that. Those two different buckets. Interesting.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So when you think about the word recruiter, like it's sort of a mixed bag, right? There's a sort of distribution of recruiters working in a certain industry, internal, external, seniority, right? I mean, you could be working with a recruiter that's, just fresh out of college, right? Versus a recruiter that's been in the industry for whatever, 10, 20, 30 years, right? And so one thing I would recommend doing is if you are somehow connecting with a recruiter, either they're reaching out to you or you're reaching out to them, and you anticipate potentially working with them or having a conversation with them, I try to figure out who they are. First and foremost is, are they internal or external? Secondly is sort of their level, right? If they're working for a boutique consulting or a boutique search firm, and maybe they're entry level, chances are they probably don't have line of sight to the hiring manager. They're probably sort of middled by either an account manager or a senior recruiter. And that's important to know, right? Because they might not be able to answer the questions that you might have, or at least the more thoughtful or sophisticated question. So getting a sense of who the recruiter is, large organization, small organization, entry level, mid level, senior level, what industry, even if they're further along in their career, maybe they just started recruiting. Maybe they have a whole 15 years of sales experience, and somehow they got into recruiting. They want to be a recruiter now. And so I would try to understand who you're working with. And then also I keep going back to this, but like just understanding kind of the incentive structures of recruiters, particularly third-party recruiters. Most third-party recruiters, again, third-party recruiters are recruiters that are recruiting for a number of different companies, right? Usually through an agency. And in contrast, internal recruiters are working for the company that they're hiring for. So I don't know, like Google, right? They have recruiters. They have a lot of contract recruiters actually, but they're still considered internal recruiters, and they're recruiting only for that company, right? Whereas external recruiters, they're working for a third-party agency, and they might be working on a number of different companies. And so, I think what's important to identify is just ideally you're working with a recruiter that is experienced, that has they have leverage, like they have leverage and they have line of sight to the hiring authority, which is typically a hiring manager. And that's important because they can, if they have line of sight to that person, they are more likely to understand what the needs of the role are, and then all the nuances, right? But they're also likely to be able to directly champion you as a candidate, right? As opposed to going to layers. And so it's important to that's what I would recommend in terms of trying to get to know who you're working with.
Yep. No, that's good.
helpful,
That
Brad?
makes
Okay.
total sense. Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. And it also extends to like the reputation of the firm, right? Every firm, large, small, they'll have different personalities too, which is often stems from the leadership, right? You have, it falls on the spectrum, right? You have companies that might be just sort of just fast and loose, and they're just really transactional. And you have firms that are on the other end of the spectrum where they're more thoughtful, they're more interested in developing longer term relationships. One of the incentives, right, is a recruiter working with a high level candidate. The thought is that if they build a good relationship with that candidate, and that candidate eventually finds their next position, that candidate or that new hire candidate will be in a place where they'll be in a position to hire and potentially bring on their firm as a client. And so yeah, that's another sort of dynamic that's at play too.
Yeah, very good. Quick follow-up question. Is there a
Yeah.
resource to understand the type of recruiting company? Is there like a recruiter association or something? Because again, it's a flood of different requests from different companies. I've never heard of a lot of them. Is there a way to maybe do some research or investigation into that recruiting company so you know who you're dealing with, right? Is there a way to get some additional information other than maybe just a Google search, right?
It sounds like you're getting a good amount of inbound. Am I hearing that correctly?
I am, but it's taking a lot of time, right? Trying to filter through and because sometimes I get a call out of nowhere, and they haven't even really looked at my resume. And if they looked at my resume, they understood my level of experience, and they wouldn't even have called me, right? So I'm getting very different levels of contact, and it's interesting. It's like when a state job's posted, I might get 15 call outs from all these different recruiters on the same job, right? And they're all trying to kind of peck in
Yeah.
that. So I'm trying to understand, like, where should I spend my time with? Who should I be spending it with? And I've had some great discussions with some really good recruiters. I didn't get the position, but they were, like you said, they were on my side and they were really engaged and had provided good feedback and things like that. So, but there's this other bucket where it's just I'm spending a lot of time trying to filter through what they probably should have been filtering through. Is there a way to kind of better filter that out before I kind of move forward, right? Before that kind of start that discussion.
Yeah, barriers to entry to becoming a recruiter are pretty low. I hate to say it. And so some of that noise you might be getting might be sort of result of that. And you'll have to sort of tune sort of your feelers to determine whether the recruiter that's on the recruiter that's on the other end of the line is worth your time or not. I mean, you could ask some very specific questions around, do you like who is the client that you're recruiting for? And more often than not, they should be able to tell you without any reservations. And you can also ask them, how long have you been recruiting for that client? Do you have line of sight to the hiring manager? And you can start to do that. And if they're fumbling through their answers, chances are, so one dynamic, right, is sometimes these folks will recruit and they don't even have a position. They don't even have the position, like a signed position or contract with a client. It's sort of chicken and egg. They'll try to build this pipeline and they'll try to use that pipeline to go solicit a contract with a client, right? And so if you get the sense that that's what they're doing, you might want to just be wary of that because they might be wasting your time.
Yep. No, that's good.
And-
Thank you very much.
Yeah. And this whole job search thing it's really an exercise of optimizing your time and where do you put your energy, right? So I could probably do one more question if anyone has anything.
Yeah, where might you find recruiters specific for your industry? How do you go about doing that?
So one thing you can do, yeah, I assume that you're all on LinkedIn, is if you look at, so a lot of folks when they start a new job, they'll post something on LinkedIn to the effect of, hey, I just started, and then all these folks will start liking it or commenting on it. That could be a source of seeing who was involved in the recruiting process for that person, especially if it's a high level person. Because more often than not, that person was being championed or working with a recruiter. And chances are that recruiter, I mean, I almost guarantee that recruiter is on LinkedIn and is engaging with that person's content that says, oh yeah, I just started at this new position. So you can look for recruiters through there, especially if that person, and particularly if that person is working for a company that you're interested in, or in or in the industry that you're interested in. So that's one way. Referrals obviously are another way, and referrals are another way to referrals from somebody that you trust. Is another way to find a recruiter. And when you're evaluating a recruiter, right, and kind of alluded to this earlier, make sure that they're in the right industry, right? I mean, you could just do a search for recruiters on LinkedIn, and obviously you'll have to kind of like filter through the right industries and the right size companies and geography, because that's important. because most recruiters specialize in geography, industry, sort of size of company, sector. So I hope that helps. John, that was your question, right, John?
Yeah, absolutely. That was me. And yeah, that was very helpful. Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you, Eric.
All right, we're at the bottom of the hour. If anyone has any questions, pop them into the question board, and we'll get to them next week. And have a great week. Spring is here.
Thanks,
We'll
everyone.
talk to all of you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, John, Hervé, Cosette, Danielle.
Bye.
Yes.